Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year to everybody in the new year. This is Alex here from Pangantau's German Shepherds. I hope you had a terrific holiday with your family and you were bringing in the new year in good spirits. This channel is not just about German Shepherds. This channel is an overall channel regarding dogs, whether it's a Cumberland Spaniel, a Doberman, a Rottweiler, or any other breed, because the topics we touch are nutrition for dogs, vitamins for dogs, behavior of dogs, and dog training and dog breeding and genetics. So these topics are applicable across multiple breeds of dogs. So I hope you stop by this channel often. Do me a quick favor, please click like and subscribe because that lets the YouTube algorithm know that we're relevant and gets our channel published and in people's eyes. Today's topic is what can a breeder do to affect the successful outcome of a puppy in their litter? What should a buyer do with a puppy? And how much of a dog's behavior is nature versus nurture? And so let us begin. I think that the successful outcome of a puppy can be influenced by the first 12 weeks of its life in its early uh, uh, socialization that it receives from the breeder. And let's talk about that. Some breeders, like myself, believe in early neurological stimulation. And there's a video on my website by Dr. Battaglia. I'll put a link to that video below that describes what is called a super dog program or called an early neurological stimulation program. This program has been shown to create better outcomes physically, response to stress, response to cold, response to fear. Dogs are better neurologically equipped to handle stress later in life through this program. And so I'm a follower of that program. But past that point, what can the breeder do to influence the successful outcome of their dog that they've raised and they've cultivated that particular pedigree and that particular puppy? Well, there's actually a lot a breeder can do to affect the successful outcome of a puppy, and the first 12 weeks of a puppy's life have a big role in determining the outcome of that puppy. Let me explain. If you look at the videos on my YouTube channel, I'm going to post a link to some of them in the description. You will see me doing a lot of desensitization work with puppies that I've raised. You'll see me play a TV, which is running a YouTube loop of various household noises, a blender sound, a vacuum cleaner sound, thunderstorm sounds, rain sounds, nature sound, bird sounds, drill, street sounds of sirens. So by the time the puppy hears all these sounds in the background as it's lying in its whelping box, it tunes them out like white noise. In other words, the dog is desensitized to all these kinds of noises because it's been exposed to them as non-threatening during its week 4 through week 6. It's just listening to these as background noise. And so when you bring that puppy home where he had all these sounds played in the background of a blender or a dishwasher or a vacuum cleaner, the dog is not going to freak out because it's the first time it's hearing that sound. It will remember that sound from its uh, whelping box days and it will not freak out. On the other hand, if a breeder just walks over, cleans up the mess in the whelping box, the poop and the pee, makes sure they're fed, and then walks away and expects the mother to do all the rest, that's a disservice to the puppies because they're not going to live up to their genetic potential. Every dog has a genetic potential. And the question is, can you make the dog live up to its genetic potential? By doing early neurological stimulation as well as sound and sight sensitivity desensitization, you're increasing the odds of a successful outcome of that puppy. Now, the successful outcome of that puppy is defined by a box. That box is the breed. So, what is a successful outcome for, let's say, a Cumberland Spaniel, defining what is a success in the behavior of that breed is a different successful outcome than what defines, for example, a Golden Retriever, or, for example, a Kelpie, or a Sheltie, or an Australian Cattle Dog. What is a successful outcome from one breed is an impossible target for a different breed. In other words, the genetic box is the breed. The breed defines the box of what isn't possible with that particular puppy within the genetic confines of the breed. Now, a lot of people have unrealistic outcomes for their puppies. They see these YouTube videos where usually it's a Malinois. They see the dog healing with its head up high, prancing, very high quality obedience being shown. And we live in a time of ADD. People have very short attention spans. So people are scrolling on their phone, scroll, 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 scroll. They want to be entertained. They don't want to learn anything. They just want to be entertained. And certainly watching a dog healing with its head up high, its neck stretched out, it looks very entertaining, doesn't it? But is that how you live with that dog every day, with it healing its head up? No, 90% of the time or more, you're living with the animal in day-to-day life and not doing focus heal routine in a Schützen field. That's not realistic as how you live with that breed or that dog. 90% of the time, you're just living with that dog. You're not doing advanced training with that dog. And people have to judge the dog in front of them, and that dog may not be necessarily a highly motivational breed. Like some breeds are highly motivated breeds, German Shepherds, especially from working lines, Belgian Malinois, Belgian Tourverin, Australian Kelpie. A lot of the herding breeds are very easily trained in obedience. Um, you might be seeing a dog do bite work, but if you have a little Shih Tzu, do you actually expect it to see it doing bite work? So, so what is considered an acceptable outcome is defined by the box that is the breed. So you can't have expectations of your dog beyond the ability of that breed to develop to deliver those expectations. In other words, don't expect magic out of a bloodhound, which is bred for good nose, that you might only find in a Alaskan sled dog, which can pull a sled. In other words, the success, what is defined as success of a good outcome, is limited by the genetic box that dog breed belongs to. That's why we've created breeds. Different breeds have different temperaments and different purposes. And so, what you will consider the successful outcome behaviorally and temperamentally will be different based on breed. I'm sure you're aware of that, but some people don't have realistic expectations. They expect every dog to be like the high drive dogs they see on a 10-second TikTok video. Remember, we're not living in a world of 10-second videos. We're living in the real world where things don't take 10 seconds. And training a dog is not 10 seconds either. Training a dog involves a lot of repetition of the same command over and over until it's solid, and then can be moved from a distraction free environment to a distraction based environment, and eventually off leash. So it's a lot of slog work, repeat, 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 until the behavior is solid. Now, that's not sexy to watch. That's slow and repetitive building of a behavior to become basically almost on cue. But you're not going to see that in a 10-second TikTok video. So make sure your expectations are in line with what you really can really achieve in the real world. Not only is your breed not necessarily a highly motivated breed, but you as a pet owner slash trainer are not at the skill level to develop that dog to that standard. I see Facebook message groups where everybody's complaining about their dog's reactivity or separation anxiety, many, many complaints about different topics. Well, the question is, what are your expectations and how good are you as a trainer? A professional trainer who has trained a lot of dogs may have through hands-on experience, knowledge of how to develop that dog. You may have only had one or two dogs in your life, so you may not have that experience. or this may be your first dog, therefore you don't have experience. So you have to have realistic expectations of the dog in front of you and of yourself. Give yourself a break, man. Don't hold yourself accountable for a standard you can't possibly achieve. Just be happy with your dog and what you're able to achieve with it on your own terms, not as per the terms you see on TikTok or Facebook or YouTube Shorts. That's not the real world, guys. That's just a short, entertaining video. That's all it is. Now, getting back to puppies. Well, so if I put a puppy through a socialization protocol, will that puppy necessarily be guaranteed to turn out successful? If a breeder follows a socialization protocol, will that puppy be guaranteed, keyword guaranteed, to be successful? The answer is no. A breeder can do a lot to influence the behavior of a puppy. Let me give you an example. I've seen puppies raised by other breeders where the new owner touches the puppy by its rib cage, just lifting it up or something, and the puppy starts biting violently because it doesn't like being touched on its rib cage. Now, that puppy will be desensitized because the new owner will lift the puppy up and down multiple times. But is that behavior genetic? No, it's because the dog was not socialized to being handled and picked up a lot. That's a breeder which fed the dogs, cleaned up after them, and walked away. It wasn't handled a lot. That's why it's not used to it, so it responds negatively. What a new owner should do is touch the dog by its collar, feed. Touch by the collar, feed. Touch by the collar, feed. Or touch the paw, feed. Touch the paw, feed. In other words, the dog has to get used to being handled either by a groomer or a veterinarian. The best approach is to touch it on the part of the body the vet or groomer is likely to handle, feed, to build a positive association. Now, could the breeder have done some of that? Yes, obviously they could have. Some puppies freak out when you put them in a playpen for the first time. They've never been in a playpen before. Could the breeder have put the puppies in a playpen before you picked up that puppy? Of course they could have. But did they? Obviously not. Some puppies are not used to being alone away from its litter mates. From 6 weeks to 8 weeks of age, the puppy should be able to be separated from its litter mates and get individual attention. Now, a breeder may be taking care of a litter of 10 pups, may not have the time to do it for all 10, but at some point it should do it for 4 that Monday, let's say, and for the other 4 on a Tuesday, and for the remaining 2 on a Wednesday. In other words, if there's a will, there's a way. The breeder should be able to separate the puppies into smaller sub packs or individually so the puppy learns to be by itself away from its litter mates. That's why a lot of separation anxiety comes in. The puppy was never separated from its litter mates during a critical developmental period. So the breeder should have done that. So handling, socialization, body sensitivity, ability to be on different surfaces like grass versus cement. These are things the breeder could do in the first 12 weeks of a puppy's life and ideally should do, in my opinion. Now, if a breeder did all that and you still have a behavioral issue with the puppy, is it all the breeder's fault? No, obviously not. Now you're the new owner and you have to take over where the breeder ended. You have to continue. During the first 12 months of a puppy's life, you're responsible for developing that animal. That's why we have so many COVID puppies right now being returned because because of the COVID virus, people didn't go anywhere because they were afraid to get sick, and this affected their ability to take their dogs into the world and get socialized. So we had a glut of puppies being sold because people were lonely, they were locked indoors and not have much company. So they bought puppies, and then by the same token, these puppies became poorly socialized because the people couldn't go anywhere, so they didn't have a chance to expose the dogs to the world that they're going to live in, the park, the store, the supermarket, the cafe. Dogs have to be socialized to the outside world in order to be confident in the outside world. And so you as the new owner, that's your responsibility. The breeder could do all they can, but you have to take over. And for the first 12 months of the dog's life, You have to make every effort to socialize that dog to its surroundings and what it'll meet in life. Now, the question is, what are positive and what are negative outcomes? Well, we as human beings, find some outcomes unacceptable, like aggression, for example. Aggression is an unacceptable outcome for a pet level dog. Now, even though we've bred aggression into certain breeds, in today's society, aggression is frowned upon and undesirable, but it's actually perfectly natural in some breeds. So the question is, do you understand the breed you got? They're not all golden retrievers with just a different look to them. It's not like you're buying a car, which is basically a car, but has a different appearance package. In other words, it's a different breed. It's a living thing. It's not a manufactured item. It's a living thing with a lot of genetics and years, hundreds of years of breeding to create those genetics. So nature has a way of throwing you a curveball. No matter the breeder's best intentions, and no matter how carefully they selected the parent dogs and their temperaments, will the puppies come out in terms of temperament like the parents? Not really, which may find surprising. Why is that? Well, nature has a way of throwing you a curveball. You see, in nature, nature selects for variability. The greater the variability of a specific animal, the greater are its chances of survival. So, for example, let's say the animal is living in a resource rich environment, like we provide for dogs. We provide food, we provide shelter, right? The dog, which is very fearful and very scared, doesn't do well because it's in an environment where that behavior is not desirable. So the bold puppy and the confident puppy does well in that resource rich environment. But let's say the puppy was to grow up in a very chaotic environment, full of predators and birds of prey and so forth. Then being a little fearful would help the puppy to survive because it's afraid to make a mistake and get killed or eaten by a predator, right? Because they come from wolves. That's why I'm describing like an eagle eating a wolf puppy would not be a good thing, right? For the survival of that pack. So in that case, being a little fearful and shy helps the dog to survive as a puppy, right? Now, let's say the dog is living in a very non-resource rich environment, not a lot of food to eat, um, not much predictability in when it will eat. Now, will a dog which is resource guarding and who's more aggressive in order to eat and get food survive in a poor resource environment? In other words, not a resource rich environment, but a resource poor environment. Yes, being aggressive and being able to grab food and eat and survive and therefore live to the age of reproduction helps you to survive because you're in a resource poor environment, right? So certain characteristics are desirable in nature based on the environment. Now, we humans provide a resource rich environment. So the ability to guard over food is undesirable in this situation, right? But in a resource poor environment, the ability to get food from your littermates or steal food as you grab it is an undesirable characteristic, correct? So nature doesn't care about the individual dog, it cares about survival of the species, not that individual puppy. So if a specific behavior trait helps it to survive, then nature will let that behavior trait perpetuate. In other words, it doesn't care about the individual dog surviving, it cares about the species surviving, not that individual animal. And so we as breeders think we can control the outcome because we want highly predictable and not high variability in our dogs. But nature throws you a curveball and does the exact opposite. It does high variability and high um, differentiation in our dogs. So we breeders want to limit variability and variation. That's why we created breeds. So we can create predictable behavioral characteristics and physical characteristics. Nature wants to not have breeds. Nature wants to have as much variability as possible in order to ensure survival of the species. So some breeders are disheartened by that because despite their best efforts, they're like, nothing I do matters. They all over the place in their temperament, and I can't predict their outcome. Now, don't get me wrong; it's not all doom and gloom. Breeders know a lot about what they're doing if they're good breeders. Now, some people say, well, the pedigree doesn't matter. The puppy is just a puppy. It's all in how you raise them. No, guys, it's the exact opposite. The pedigree is exactly what matters because the pedigree has a determining factor of which genetic traits passed on from those parents and grandparents. In fact, I look more to the grandparents' generation and the parents' generation in looking at a pedigree. So people who tell you the pedigree doesn't matter don't know what they're talking about. People who say breed doesn't matter, it's all in how you raise them, they don't know what they're talking about. Now, which end of the spectrum is more responsible? Is it nature is 50% and nurture is 50%? Is it 50-50, guys? Or is it 80-20? Nature is 80%, nurture is 20%, or the opposite? Nurture is 80% and nature is 20%. The answer is they're both 100%. He says, what? Nature is 100% and nurture is 100%. Nature gives you the box of the range of behaviors possible for that breed. Now, in the range of behaviors for that breed, you have outliers. You have dogs which are very end of the extreme of the behavior of that breed, and you have dogs which are in the middle of the behavior territory of that breed, and dogs which are the extreme of that breed. And same thing with nurture. Some breeders provide a highly socialized puppy, which has been exposed to a lot of things, and some breeders provide a very unsocialized puppy, which has been exposed to very little. You, as the new owner, are responsible for taking over where the breeder left off. You are responsible for getting the best out of that puppy that you can get within the box that is the breed and nature. In other words, the confines of a Cumberland Spaniel and its behavior chain is different than the box, which is a German Shepherd. The German Shepherd box is a different genetic box than let's say, a Dachshund, which wants to go to the ground and catch badgers, right? So that's a different kind of a breed. So nature is 100% and nurture is 100%, each within their respective category. In other words, it's not a blend of this and that. It is each within its own category is 100% of its own category. Nature defines the box and nurture defines what you do with that box. So while breeders can influence the lifetime behavior of your dog, that's just too much of a burden to bear and it's impossible. Breeders can have a positive influence on the early stages of emotional and neurological development of that puppy, which you then, as the buyer, have to then take over. All right, guys. Well, this wraps up this episode. Please contact me if you want more questions like this answered, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next one. Take care.